Every day we go about our lives driven by routine and blindfolded to the realities of the world around us. Our vision is clouded by the very normalcy we take for granted. Countless victims of human trafficking walk among us, seemingly invisible. Until now. The Blue Campaign provides a unified voice for those who oppose the heinous crime of human trafficking. Whether it's forced labor, domestic servitude, or the sex trade, it's time we open our eyes.
Sorry, I didn't even see you.
No one ever does.
Learn what you can do to help by visiting dhs.gov/bluecampaign.
You turn on the television or you pick up a newspaper magazine and all the information you see is just controlled by a handful of corporations. So how are you or I or any of us, how can we get our messages out to people? How can you tell people what you care about? You can go on Facebook and compete with hundreds of people who post things that may or may not be true. You can go on Twitter and post things with a handful of characters, because Twitter is really the place for literate people to hang out. Or you could go in with a sandwich board and walk the streets. You could write a letter to the editor. Or, even better, you could go to public access television. Public access serves your community on a first-come, first-served basis. And whether you're rich or poor, doesn't matter. It's first-come, first-served. Everyone in the community is welcome to come to public access and talk about not only the issues that are important to them, but if you have a poem to recite, a story to tell, a song to sing, just anything at all that's in your mind or a heart to tell, you come to public access. Public access in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I'm speaking right now, has been around since 1980, and I've seen it change events in Fayetteville. And the nice thing about public access now in the 21st century is that it's not just on a television channel, but it's also on the internet, so you can reach people around the world. So if you feel frustrated at not being able to talk to people, not being able to get your message out, and you think there's no way to do it, well, take heart, there is. Public access, it's a vital component of our First Amendment rights. So public access, like the man says, use it or lose it.
Hi, I'm Chris Mickelson, and I'm Public Access. So are you.
Hi, with us today is Sarah Marsh. How are you?
Great.
Now you're an alderman with Fayetteville in Ward 1.
Yes.
So what position are you with?
Position 2.
Position 2, that's like Hertz, the old car rental company. They were number 2, so they tried harder. So is that true for you too?
I definitely try my best.
Okay. Now how long have you been an alderman now?
I have been an alderman for a little over 2 years. And so I have a little less than 2 years left in my first term before I run for re-election.
This wasn't the first office you sought, because years ago you ran for Congress under the auspices of the Green Party.
Absolutely. That's really how I got involved in politics. Actually, funny story. I had no intention of getting involved in the Green Party. Actually, me and my best friend went over to my mother's house looking for food to eat because we were poor college students.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I don't have anything, but there's going to be food at this Green Party meeting I'm going to if you want to come along. And we thought, free food, of course. So we went, and there was no free food. But there was an amazing group of really passionate, committed people
Yeah.
that were working for progressive social change, and I just got sucked in, and really wanted to take the 10 key values of the Green Party and
Right.
see what I could do with that. So that's how I got involved in politics initially.
So what was that like? What was that like? What was that election like for you?
Well, running as a third-party candidate, first of all, it was hard to even get in the election
Oh,
because
hell yeah.
at that time, it was when Asa Hutchinson, our now governor, resigned to go and head the DEA.
Right.
So there was going to be a special election to fill the position. But we discovered that there was actually no way for a third-party candidate to get on a special election ballot in Arkansas. So we actually had to sue the state, saying that that was unconstitutional. And so we approached the ACLU with it. They agreed to take our case, but they said, you have to have a candidate. So there's someone who has to have been harmed by this. And so I just thought, it's a name on a lawsuit, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And they filed the suit, and the same day the state said, you're right. And they settled, and suddenly I'm on the general election ballot.
Ah.
But, you know, I mean, I'm a reasonable, pragmatic person. I knew I wasn't going to get elected. I'm a 25-year-old kid running on a third-party ticket in Arkansas. So my whole approach was to figure out how can I influence the caliber of the debate? Because prior to that, you know, the Democratic candidate, he was actually a year older than me. And he had this commercial of him hunting in the woods with his Baptist preacher talking about God, guns, and the American way.
Yeah.
And you know, that was supposed to be our Democratic left-leaning option. And so I really wanted to refocus the debate to talk more about living wages and the environment and social justice issues. And I think I was able to do that in a lot of the debates I participated in. So in that way, I saw it as a success in terms of trying to get people, the politicians, talking about things that affect real people day to day.
And then, of course, which leads into running for office in Ward 1.
Yes. I had moved back to Fayetteville after an 8-year stint in Seattle, and I was underemployed. I'm still underemployed, you know. It's like you have all this education and experience, and there's really not a lot of avenues to put that to use in Fayetteville. So I wasn't getting that out of my professional life, so I thought, well, I should be engaged in my community again. And I should put all of my expertise in planning and architecture and public policy to use working for the citizens. And so that's what compelled me to run.
Now, you have a degree in architecture.
I do, yes.
Now, is this something that has come into, is this something you found useful being on the city council?
Yes, because, you know, we do regulate a lot of building codes as well, but more in line of like planning terms, because we make a lot of land use decisions. And that was really more my interest when I was in architecture school, was planning. I did 2 semesters at the Community Design Center, and we actually focused, our project was focused on Southeast Fayetteville, and that's really where I began to discover the uniqueness and the opportunities that existed in South Fayetteville, as well as the challenges that really needed to be addressed.
A lot of people tend to dismiss that part of town.
They do, and they're missing out.
Yeah.
They're really missing out. You know, at one point that was the gateway to our community before the bypass, or I guess what's now I-49, was built. You know, people would come to Fayetteville that way, and that's their first impression.
Right.
And you know, Ward 1, it has the Commerce District, which we used to call the Industrial Park. That employs over 3,000 people. So there's a major jobs base there.
I know, and it's a strong working class district.
Absolutely.
It's like the heart and soul of Fayetteville right there.
Yes, and we have the historic African American neighborhood, so there's a lot of diversity there. And it's home to a lot of the creative class people who, you know, don't necessarily have the big salaries, but they have the big creativity.
Because they're creative class, working class.
Absolutely. And so, you know, you have the most diversity there. You have a tremendous amount of history, and it's also an interesting place from a natural perspective with the watersheds and the water runoff issues that we have down there.
Yeah.
It's really a unique place, and it's been overlooked for too long.
Yeah.
And neglected for too long.
And you were unopposed.
I was. I came out early, I came out strong, and you know, I think that even though I may have some disagreements with some people politically, I think it's clear that I really do have the interest of Ward 1 at heart, and I care about the ward deeply.
Now, one thing you're involved with is Main Street Fayetteville.
Yes. Main Street is something I got started I was inspired to do it through my involvement in the Fayetteville Forward Historic and Heritage Resources Action Group. And Main Street is actually part of the Arkansas Downtown Network, which is it's a program of the Department of Arkansas Heritage. So we applied to the Little Rock office to be accepted into the program. Like Eureka Springs is a Main Street community, Siloam Springs is a Main Street community. We were seeing that they were doing some good things in their downtown. So we thought this is a good starting point to help revitalize South Fayetteville. So we've actually declared the Main Street Improvement District to be it's really South School Avenue. And it starts kind of where the trail crosses underneath the Town Branch Bridge, right where Simon's Diner is, just south of the Southgate IGA.
Okay, yeah.
And extends up to the public library. And the idea is that we want to create a revitalized South Side that is really connected to downtown as well. But we want to be unique, and it's very clear that this is an empowerment plan, not a gentrification plan.
Now, that's important for a lot of people because they get creeped out when they think, oh, they're just going to start shoving people out wholesale and put pretty buildings up that people
right,
can
and that's
live
why
in.
we wanted to start something that was, had a board of directors that was heavily, engaged in the South Side.
Yeah.
And we wanted this to be a, citizen-driven program as opposed to something that maybe the regional council would impose on our community.
Now, a lot of cities don't have good downtowns. In fact, for a while in the 90s, or even the early 2000s, they used to talk about malls as being America's new downtown.
Malls are dead.
I know. You take a look around, and they're nice people who work there, but you take a look around the Northwest Arkansas Mall, and it's like almost like a fading downtown when you walk around there.
Right. And, well, a lot of the council members, we do this continuing education. A lot of them go to the municipal league conferences, whereas I go to the National League of Cities conference. And let's see, 2 years ago it was in Seattle. This past year it was in Austin. And it's like you go and you meet with these civic leaders from all around the country and share ideas and learn. And a lot of it is about learning how to make your downtown appealing. How do you bring economic development and opportunities and creative people to your downtown? And a lot of it is based on walkability. Yeah. And that's something that, malls don't, that kind of sprawl at the mall, as I call it, doesn't do well. No. We want to be you walk there, you take transit there, or if you drive, you park once. And then you walk around, and the idea that, when you walk past a storefront, it's easy to go in and buy something. Same thing with cycling. When
I came here in the 70s, Fayetteville had a pretty vibrant downtown.
It did. Well, keep in mind I was born in '76, so I don't remember all that.
I was just a young boy myself. But yeah, Fayetteville did have a pretty vibrant downtown in those days. But one of the things I think you're interested in also are bike lanes, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. Cycling draws a lot of vitality and investment to an area, as well as promoting the health and well-being of the community. When you're driving around, you're not saying hi to your neighbors, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. It's easy to just kind of filter the world out. Yeah. But when you're on a bike or you're walking, then you're more likely to engage with people, to notice, when there's litter, you could pick it up, and to just be a more active and engaged part of the community. But I know that Memphis recently they did some temporary bike lanes in one of their economically depressed areas, had a kickoff event. They were expecting about 1,000 people, and they ended up having over 5,000 people show up. And they loved the temporary bike lanes so much, they promised to make them permanent. And just with the promise of those permanent bike lanes, it attracted over $6 million of investment to that neighborhood. So, when you look at that, in comparative mile to mile, the cost of building bike lanes to auto lanes, bike lanes are a much better value and better investment for the community.
And a lot of people are still opposed to bike lanes, aren't they?
They just need to get on a bike.
I know.
Do you have a bike?
Yeah, but I have a bad back too, so it's pretty to look at. What other issues are facing Fayetteville?
I think a big one is just the economy. And when I talk about the economy, it's not just what we traditionally think of as economic measures in terms of, dollars and cents in the bank, but it's more of a triple bottom line approach. There's that financial capital, but then there's also the social capital and the social resources that we have here. What are we doing to retain the graduates of our university? To, appropriately employ people and really take full advantage of the skills and education we have in the community, and then also the natural capital. We have a tremendous wealth of our natural environment here, especially in water. If you look at what's happening in California, they're mandating water rationing. You know, it's just a matter of time before water becomes a very critical issue. But we have an abundance of clean, fresh water, and we have to protect that because it has tremendous value, not just to us, but potentially to our region in the future. So I think it's going to be, as we look forward, it's looking at this triple bottom line and balancing. You know, it's not just the money we have in the bank, but it's the value that we have in our community.
Speaking of value and money, some people feel that Fayetteville has sort of lost its way when it comes to attracting festivals to our town or other money-making events. People have drunk the Kool-Aid of regionalism, you know, around here.
There is some of that, but also I don't think you should need a festival to go downtown and spend money and see people and participate in civic life.
No, you shouldn't have to, but festivals do bring in extra money.
They do. They do. And you know, I think that is something that is definitely a part of an economic development strategy.
Yeah.
But I think it's more important for us to focus on having a livable, walkable city, a place that people want to be, so that, you know, I don't want to go home at night and turn on my television. I want to like walk down and get a dinner. I want to see people. You know, the Italians have this, they call it the passeggiato, where you actually go and you make an evening stroll. And when I lived in a city, that was very much something I did. And so I think we have to get the core of our city right first, and then the festivals are great for bringing in tourists. But, you know, if you look, there's something to do in Fayetteville constantly. I know my social calendar is booked. And a lot of times you have to find yourself choosing between really great events to attend. So, you know, I think that if we really want to maximize what those festivals can do, we really need to bring them here so that people discover the magic that is Fayetteville and then stay.
That's true, because every city in our area has its own personality.
Yes. Yes, and I worry that Fayetteville may be losing it, and I think there is something to that regionalism thing.
I know, and I just hate the whole concept of regionalism, because we're not all just one big city.
We're not, but there is something to be said for, it's like a city of neighborhoods connected by trails and transit. If we could be a region of places with unique things to do, and each of us has our own attributes. You know, I like being able to take a day trip up to Bentonville and go to the museum.
Do you feel in some ways that Fayetteville's not being promoted enough?
I think that's part of it, but I think we've done a poor job with economic development.
Yeah.
Very poor job. And there's kind of been this focus on our, you know, this Chamber of Commerce is our contracted economic development director. And I think that they've done a very poor job. So, you know, it seems like there's been an emphasis on recruiting low-wage jobs and saying, hey, come bring your company here because our workers will work for less. You know, until recently, Arkansas had the lowest minimum wage in the country.
That's pretty much a national thing, though, isn't it? I mean,
you know, it used to be, but smarter cities are wising up, and they're saying it's kind of the mentality that if you attract and retain an educated and capable workforce, those companies will come because they want your your mental capital, your capabilities. And so, you know, at the National League of Cities, one of the things that a lot of the more successful cities were doing, they have a chief innovation officer. You know, that would be great. They have a lot of more things, like we have the Startup Cup, but we need to do much more than that on a bigger scale. They have incubation spaces. You know,
what's that? What's that?
An incubation space is kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Iceberg that was here for a while. It was a co-working space for people who are maybe starting a company or running a nonprofit. You can rent office space by the hour or by the day. But the incubation centers are more for people who need to make a mess or maybe share resources. Like one of my jobs, I worked with a small clothing company that started in Fayetteville, actually won the Startup Cup, and they want to create living wage jobs for primarily women to sew, to manufacture clothing in their homes. But in order to do that, there's a lot of equipment and space needs. But try finding an affordable retail space for a small business in Fayetteville. It's impossible.
I know.
And, you know, whereas if there was an incubation center where you could go and have not just access to the space, but mentors to help you grow your business, where you can share spaces, whether it's a laser cutter that several companies could use rather than one person having to go out and invest in that. That I think it could just create a lot of synergy and opportunities for businesses to grow, form and grow, rather than come here because we have low
There's
wages.
even been large companies who've complained bitterly about the rent.
It's
When Hastings was shutting down, you know, the employees they'd made no secret of the fact of how much they were paying in rent. I won't say it on the air, but it just seemed an exorbitant amount for that where they were.
Yeah, it is exorbitant, and then when you combine that with the high utility bills, because so many buildings are in poor repair or were
Yeah.
built in the 70s or before.
Or their parking lots are in poor repair.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just a mess. So, and the landlords, I don't know if there's lack of incentive to fix them up because where else are you going to go? There's not enough competition.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of things that we can do to support economic development in the community that we haven't been doing.
Yeah.
And another thing, a lot of cities like Corvallis, Oregon, they have a great website where people who are interested in Corvallis, whether it's to move there or open a company, you can get on there and all the job postings are on one
Really?
website. Anyone can
pretty
find a
amazing.
job. And I've suggested this to our Chamber of Commerce. I've actually asked them to do it on numerous occasions, and it's been over a year now, and they've made very little effort to make that happen. And you think about...
Do you think they even bothered to check out the Corvallis website?
Yes, they did. They did, and they called and talked to them.
Yeah.
But they're just not making strides. The Chamber website is one of the front doors to our community,
Right.
and it's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
So, I think that we really have to do better
Yeah.
if we really want to stay competitive.
Now, speaking of doing better,
Yes.
one of the things you care about, I think, is Compassion Fayetteville.
Yes.
That was a nice segue, wasn't it?
Very nice. Very
But,
sensitive.
Yes. I'm not terribly compassionate. But tell us a little bit about Compassion Fayetteville.
Compassion Fayetteville, I'm peripherally involved in it
Yeah.
through the Fayetteville Forward Economic Accountability Council, which is the umbrella that does a lot of these groups. And really, it's about cultivating community and care and compassion and empathy. And I think at first I was very skeptical. I'm not a very touchy-feely person.
Yeah.
And so I was, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But then when they were doing things like the month of compassion, and they had the little certificates that you pass around, you would do an act of compassion and then share that. And
Right.
I thought that was a really neat way to really engender some good feelings and good spirit in the community, especially in such a politically divisive time.
Yeah.
For us to stop seeing what's different about us and to start
yeah.
seeing what we share in common.
I think that's a good idea because sometimes people see differences or perceived differences.
Yes.
And they just go from there.
Right. And the reality is we all have much more in common
Yeah.
than we do different. And we can get a lot further as a community if we work together and care for one another than if all we do is argue. And so I think it's like our own Department of Peace.
Yes. Speaking of perceived differences,
Yes.
some time ago we had Ordinance 119.
Our anti-discrimination
Anti-discrimination. And in a lot of ways, it echoed the battle over the Human Dignity Resolution
Yes.
back in 1999. It seemed, when I was watching on TV that night of the council session that ran like 22 hours.
It was over 10 hours.
Yes. And
ironically, I've been criticized for passing that in the middle of the night. And I think, we were there doing that in the middle of the night because we sat there for over 10 hours and listened to every citizen
I guess you
who
could have
wanted
had
to
an
speak to
intermission
us.
and come back the next morning, But it's, you were there all night because there were people lining up to talk.
Yeah, because we were going to sit there and we were going to listen to every person who wanted to talk. Which I find it's interesting that with the recent issue down in the legislature, how they claimed that they didn't have time for public comment
Right.
on their discrimination.
Now, there are so
bill.
many people from out of town
Yes,
who were speaking.
absolutely. And once we kind of figured that out, we decided to prioritize Fayetteville residents and allow Fayetteville residents to speak first. And then when they were through,
Yeah.
we listened to comments from people out of town.
You had the fear mongering, and
lot
you
of
had
that.
people who were. I almost came down and spoke,
We would have
because
listened.
as I was watching on TV, I thought, well, here's the solution: just get rid of all public restrooms and put a porta potty on every other block.
I don't think anyone would like that either, especially not in the 100-degree heat.
No, but it was like, and you see these arguments all over the country. In fact, I was watching TV last week. I think maybe it was Rachel Maddow, and there was a school board meeting on the East Coast, and I was hearing the same arguments about bathrooms and people crying at the microphone, I thought, what planet do you people come
It's
from?
fear-mongering.
Yeah.
And that's it, plain and simple. And you know, the reality is that most of us have gender-neutral bathrooms in our homes.
Yes.
And recently, I was in New York City, and I went. We were at the Modern, went to the restroom, and you know what? It's one gender-neutral bathroom with all the sinks, and then separate individual stalls, and it's completely private.
Yeah, I used a unisex bathroom in Belgium when I was overseas in the 70s. I mean,
But the reality is you know, it's this fear of people who are different. It's a lot of lack of understanding of what the transgender experience is. And it's a fixation on sexual deviancy when there's a big difference.
What they see is sexual deviancy,
well,
yeah.
You know, transgender, it's about gender. It's not about sexuality. And I think that's an important distinction to make. But really, you know, transgender people have to pee just like we have to pee. And where do we want them to go?
You know what? It wasn't a transgendered couple that killed that little boy up in Bella Vista.
No, it wasn't. And, you know, the vast majority of sexual predators are allegedly heterosexual white men. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of misplaced fear.
Yeah.
But really, I think a lot of it comes down to a real investment in the status quo and in maintaining very strict gender roles, which is something that a lot of the fundamentalist religions, you know, there's a place for men and a place for women, and they don't know what to do with people who deviate.
How do you combat that? How do you fight that? I guess this is a constant education battle, or?
I think part of it is compassion.
Yeah.
It's getting to know people and finding commonalities.
Some people don't want to get to know people.
Well, you know, my investment is in public safety. That's my interest, is in public safety. And when I see my friends who are trans women, they have no place in a men's room. That's where, you know, if you see a person who, from all appearances, looks like a woman walk into a men's restroom, she's at risk of assault, you know? And, you know, a lot of trans men, you would not feel comfortable with them in the women's room because, you know, they are men, even though their body presented as female at birth. So it's, I think a lot of it, I think about, you know, I grew up in rural Madison County.
Yeah.
Marble. And I didn't know African-American people. I didn't know what gay people were. And it was because I, you know, went to 4-H camp and shared a room with African-American girls that I realized, hey, they're just like me.
Yeah.
And as I got older and got to know gay people, I realized they're just like me.
Right.
And there's nothing to fear. And so I think it's just getting out of your shell and getting to interact with people who are different than you.
Yeah, part of this is just a terrible sexual immaturity we have in this country.
Yes, there's a lot of that.
You know, there's, but now, of course, the state has taken things into their hands, especially after Eureka Springs passed their ordinance.
Yes. The state legislature is an embarrassment to our state right now.
Big time.
Big time. And Arkansas is, you know, if we weren't already one of the laughingstocks of the country, you know, we certainly are now.
We used to say thank God for Mississippi, but
we're losing that ability.
yeah, we're losing that.
And people, you know, I've joked and called it Arkanistan, and I take a lot of grief for that. But, you know, the truth is we're number one at being last in a lot of positive metrics. And, you know, we can't keep going down this trajectory and you know, our citizenry is hurting. We're not getting good jobs.
Nope.
We're not making needed infrastructure
Not
investments.
getting good health care.
Not getting good health care. You know, although definitely the private option helped. I know I certainly got health care through that. You know, and we're at a point in time where people have options. They don't have to live in Arkansas anymore, even though they were born here. And we're seeing more and more of that brain drain. You know, why are graduates of our university leaving? Because they're finding opportunities elsewhere, and nobody wants to stay in a state full of bigots.
Do you know that was an old joke about how do you get rid of the criminal element in Arkansas?
How is that?
Give them a college diploma, because everybody with a college degree leaves Arkansas.
It's true, and you know, and I want to encourage people who do get a college degree here, go out into the world, get some experience, learn things, but then come back and help fix this place.
In some aspects, it's like people are like real happy they've never been off the mountain in their lives, and I know people who've lived in Fayetteville all their lives and never gone out of the city limits. It's like they're incapable of seeing the whole world.
Yeah.
And see that they're part of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that there's actually a lot of really neat people and interesting stuff out
Yeah.
there, and it's time to stop being afraid.
Yeah. Because fear doesn't get us anything.
No, it doesn't.
We just build fences. Now you've taken part. You've taken part in community service before.
Oh, of
You've
course.
been involved with community service.
Yeah, when I have a long track record of community service, but I guess if we start when I first moved back to Fayetteville in 2010, and I got involved in the Green Economy Group.
Right.
And we actually were lobbying really hard to pass the PACE legislation, which is the Property Assessed Clean Energy
Yeah.
bill that we had to get through the state. That was quite a battle, but once we finally did, it enabled Fayetteville to set up the first energy improvement district in the state. And actually, we just launched it a few months ago. It's up and running. We've got contractors that are certified to go out and make these energy improvements. And what it is it is a mechanism to offer low-interest, long-term loans to make energy improvement, weatherization, and water improvement in renewable energy projects happen. And so if someone is interested in doing that, they can log on to our website. It's a2e2.net. And there's a little form you can fill out where you tell a little bit about the property, and then a representative will come out and help you connect with professionals that can reduce your energy bills. And make your facility more comfortable and efficient, and then you pay those loans back through the savings that you realize in your bills.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, so it's actually it's either revenue neutral or revenue positive for the person making those improvements. Because 97 cents of every dollar we spend on energy leaves our state. So energy efficiency, you might as well just put a hole in your pocket.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason for that when we can employ people locally to make these improvements or leverage this program to produce our own energy.
Right.
So it's part of the whole wealth retention agenda.
Yeah. Now another thing, you've also been a strong advocate for public transportation.
Absolutely. That is something that Fayetteville is way behind on. And if you look at trends with millennials, which millennials are the generation that is most mobile, they want to live in places where they don't have to own an automobile.
Right.
I know that was what propelled me to leave Fayetteville when I graduated from college. And so, part of that is attracting those millennials, and part of it's an economic justice issue. It costs an incredible amount of money to operate, own, and maintain an automobile, just insurance alone.
Yes.
And especially when you consider how low our wages are here.
Absolutely.
So, and then if you add to that our aging population, whether that's the baby boomers or the generation beyond that, who are going to get to the point where they're not as independent in terms of their transportation choices. So part of transportation, it's about inclusive mobility, and it's not just for those who want to take it, but also those who need to take it.
And if you make low wages, most of the places where you can get an automobile from, those are places which probably shouldn't be selling cars.
Well, I don't know about that in particular, but I know that when I moved to Fayetteville, I had to buy an automobile because I did not have one previously. And so, I went out, I found a fuel-efficient used car. It cost me $10,000 to buy it, pay the taxes, get insurance. That was like a $10,000 tax for moving to Fayetteville. And, not a lot of people are wanting to make that investment.
No.
And then you look at, I used to get calls from a woman who lived down off of Curtis Avenue in some of the low-income housing. She was deaf, so that limited her ability to get a driver's license and get a job.
Right.
And so she lost her job. She wasn't able to find one that she could access with public transit.
Yeah.
She was having to shop down at the 7-Eleven because it was the only place she could walk to because there was no sidewalks down there.
You can't survive paying convenience store prices.
No, well, that and just the health impacts on her child, because she had a child that she wanted to feed healthy food. She went to her apartment complex to try to start a community garden. They told her no. Finally, she gave up and moved to Portland. I can't say I blame her. And she was a very intelligent, capable, motivated person who wanted to participate and be live a productive life. But her limited access to public transit prohibited her from doing that in Fayetteville. That's unacceptable.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Talking about sustainability.
Yes.
A lot of people, we hear the word sustainability a lot, but a lot of people, it's kind of like when you say something is gluten-free. A lot
Right.
of people still really aren't quite sure what it means. So what does sustainability mean when it's a
I
name?
think, first of all, it's important to think about, well, there's this perception that sustainability is about, the environment and, the endangered species, but really sustainability is about us, the
Right.
humans, and how our environment is able to continue providing the ecological services that we need in order to survive and thrive as
Yeah.
a species. And so sustainability is just really making sure that we take care of this resource, this incredibly valuable and essential resource, so that we can continue to live in a way that is comfortable for us.
Now, speaking of sustainability and community gardens,
Mm-hmm.
some time back you wanted to turn the Mexican Original property into a community garden.
Well, I wanted a portion of that
Portion of
site
it.
to be designated as a community garden, because that site actually, it's a pretty low income neighborhood down there. It's a food desert.
Yeah.
And, and people need access to fresh,
Yeah.
healthy foods.
Yeah.
And community gardens are also civic spaces where people can come together and, whether it's people in the retirement communities down there that just need some companionship.
Yeah.
It's a place for kids to get excited about digging in the dirt and understanding soil,
Yeah.
and how our food is grown. And I think it helps kids eat better, because kale is gross when you see it in the store, but it's kind of exciting if you grow it yourself. So I think that, if we really want to be a healthy community, we have to create spaces for people to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a good opportunity
Yeah.
for it.
Now, there are issues facing other cities that Fayetteville faces as well, or will face. One of them is, and we're pretty lucky in this town, that we have not had the horrific police shootings
Yes.
that you see in other parts of the country. But I always felt like what cities need are civilian review boards.
I agree, absolutely. I mean, it's checks and balances, I think, are essential to keep anything functioning well. And we also need to increase the number of minority officers on our force,
Yeah.
so that our police force reflects the diversity that we see in our community. And I
Yeah.
think that putting diverse perspectives on the force also helps them to be more sensitive to the different elements in our community.
Yeah. Now, aren't you a member of, or what exactly is a home energy professional?
Home energy professionals are people who are qualified to go out and assess the energy efficiency of a home. And there's actually several rating systems. The most popular one is called a HERS score. It's the Home Energy Rating Score.
Yeah.
And it establishes a baseline, which is kind of what the building code requires you to build. And then it scores you in relation to that. So you have an idea of how your home is performing in relationship to the optimal home. And it gives you an idea of where you need to invest to improve that. Whether it's adding insulation, doing air sealing. A lot of times it's just duct sealing. You'd be
Yeah.
amazed at how much energy, money, as we
Yeah.
talked about earlier, leaks out of people's ducts into their attic.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to spend the money, if you're going to buy that energy, use it wisely, use it efficiently, and get the maximum benefit out of that.
Yeah. Now, isn't one of the things, I was looking you up on the internet, I know one of the things you do for relaxation is watercolors or water
Yes.
painting.
I do a little bit of watercolor painting. I've taken some classes down at the Community Creative Center with Beth Wosner. She's a great teacher. I did quite a bit of it in architecture school, but it's a great way to relax. But
Yeah.
lately, my big thing is sewing. I also studied couture apparel design at the New York Fashion Academy, and that's something that I would really like to do more with. So I make a lot of my own clothes.
Right.
This blouse, my
Very
own
nice.
design, thank you. And so I've been doing a lot of sewing. I really would like to create a line of clothing
Yeah.
that's made out of natural fibers that we can manufacture here locally and that addresses the needs of more dimensionally dynamic women.
Right. So, do you think Fayetteville's economy is strong enough to last us through the next several years?
I think some people will last through the next few years. I don't think it's well structured to serve everyone. I think there's a lot of wealth disparity here. I think there's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 4 people are food insecure
Right.
in Washington County. 1 in 3 children, that's every third child, doesn't have consistent access to food. That's unacceptable. I don't think the economy is serving us all right now.
Yeah. You know, one thing we don't see much in Fayetteville, we don't see a lot of working class involvement in local politics.
They're exhausted.
I know they are. I know they are.
And you know, when you work 2 jobs, when you're constantly stressed and every decision you make is balanced down to the penny, who has time
Right.
for politics? And the other thing is, I think, is lack of good information.
Yeah.
Our media is terrible. You can't believe a thing you read or a thing you read in the local paper. The news isn't much better. They just often miss the point. And so for the casual news consumer, they're not getting the story. So it's hard to get involved when you don't know what's happening or how to get involved.
Oh, because you got to make room for the cat videos. a lot of people like cat videos, but I mean, you have to make room for the cute YouTube videos on the news, which kind of, and the entertainment news, which kind of shoves local issues aside.
Yeah, and so there's just not a lot of good reporting for people to know what's going on in their government. And what you do, a lot of times the reporting is focused on the controversy.
Right.
And who wants to get into that?
And they don't explain the controversy.
No, they don't. And so, you know, I think if we really want to truly engage citizenry, first of all, we've got to, you know, restore work-life balance so people have time to contribute to their community.
Right.
And then second, making sure that they have opportunities to inform themselves with good information.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of being informed, my director just threw a chair against the wall. I think he's trying to inform us that our time's up for the day.
Right.
But anyway, Sarah, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate
That's
it.
right. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Chris Mickelson, and I'm public access. So are you.
Every day we go about our lives driven by routine and blindfolded to the realities of the world around us. Our vision is clouded by the very normalcy we take for granted. Countless victims of human trafficking walk among us, seemingly invisible. Until now. The Blue Campaign provides a unified voice for those who oppose the heinous crime of human trafficking. Whether it's forced labor, domestic servitude, or the sex trade, it's time we open our eyes.
Sorry. I didn't even see you.
No one ever does.
Learn what you can do to help by visiting dhs.gov/bluecampaign.
You turn on the television or you pick up a newspaper magazine, and all the information you see is just controlled by a handful of corporations. So how are you or I or any of us, how can we get our messages out to people? How can you tell people what you care about? You can go on Facebook and compete with hundreds of people who post things that may or may not be true. You can go on Twitter and post things with a handful of characters, because Twitter is really the place for literate people to hang out. Or you could go in with a sandwich board and walk the streets. You could write a letter to the editor. Or, even better, you could go to public access television. Public access serves your community on a first-come, first-served basis. And whether you're rich or poor, Doesn't matter. It's first come, first served. Everyone in the community is welcome to come to public access and talk about not only the issues that are important to them, but if you have a poem to recite, a story to tell, a song to sing, just anything at all that's in your mind or a heart to tell, you come to public access. Public access in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I'm speaking right now, has been around since 1980, and I've seen it change events in Fayetteville. And the nice thing about public access now in the 21st century is that it's not just on a television channel, but it's also on the internet, so you can reach people around the world. So if you feel frustrated at not being able to talk to people, not being able to get your message out, and you think there's no way to do it, well, take heart. There is. Public access. It's a vital component of our First Amendment rights. So public access, like the man says, use it or lose it.
Drop loose, sand it down again. Yeah, the soul man is my old friend. This old man, he drives cars, old red Fords with black old tires and a pickup truck. Lots of luck, will it start again? Yeah, this old man is my old friend. This old man, he loves kids. He thinks pumpkin is really his. With a game of cards, staring hard, looking down his nose. There's lots of things that this man knows. Tried to love her, but she wouldn't be true. Breaks a man's heart right in two. The day she left him, the sky turned gray. But he got up and worked the very same day. Oh, this old man, he has pain, he rolls it over inside his brain. But the memories come time and time again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. This old man, he works hard all day long till he gets tired. But he never stops thinking months what he's gonna do, and he keeps on thinking till he gets through. This old man, he builds trains and signs his name with a piece of wood. Drop it loose, sand it down again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. Yeah, this old man is my old friend.
She's home watching. Now this song could be sung as a general sense, or it could be sung in a specific sense.
Okay.
I sing it in the specific.
Okay.
Lovely lady, haven't seen her in a long, long time. You know she's always on my mind. Sure would like to see her again today. If she only knew how much I need her when she's not around. My soul aches while my heart waits like a lost child waits to be found. And in my mind I see her, she's everything I wanted to be. And the only thing she cares about doing is taking good care of me. Lovely lady, haven't seen her in a long, long time. You know she's always on my mind. Sure would like to see her again today. Such a lovely lady. If I could be with her just once more, I would love her like never before. We would have one another for a while. I never know where she's coming from, it doesn't matter where she's been. All I know is when I'm in her arms, the world seems nice again. She doesn't always look the same, and she has a lot of different names, but I always seem to know her when I see her, and it's loving time again. Lovely lady, if I could be with her just once more, I would love her like never before, and we would have one another for a while. Such a lovely lady. If I could just see her again, maybe it wouldn't have to end, and I wouldn't be here wishing like I am now for my lovely lady. I haven't seen her in a long, long time, you know she's always on my mind. Sure would like to see her again today. Sure would like to see her again. See her again today.
The Smiler Rag by Percy Wenrick.
Grab-assing. Sunday night the lesson begins. You want to teach me how a woman will wait for a man to make the first move? A real woman, you say, will not go grab-assing a man's sensibilities just because she feels like it. A nice woman waits ever so delicately for a man to decide when the time is right. You want to teach me to be shy and gentle, but I don't have a talent for it. Waiting is death. Desire can go rancid. Even frozen it starts to turn, stinking up the house within your window. Better to use it all up and make a fresh batch. You want to teach me how to mop and sweep and cook. You want to get me used to the bit in my mouth, but I am laughing too hard. I cannot be broken to field or house. Too many others have tried only to be thrown, their bones crunching against the rock-hard earth. Wednesday night you give up, cook dinner yourself. Spaghetti from a can burns on the stove while I dance you into a corner, grab-assing all your stereotypes in unwomanly fashion.
I kind of souped this song up from when I wrote it. This is a boogie woogie song. It's about down on Dixon Street. Sitting out on the front porch picking up on Ralston Street. The old tomcat, he's laid on the rail and the old dog's laying in the feet. Sam and Iris are out in the kitchen cooking up some delight. When they come out, we'll do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie. Oh, my love to do the boogie woogie, it makes me feel so good. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, I really think you should. Let your hands start clapping and your toes start tapping, we'll have a real good time. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie. I went down to listen to the Duck Lodge boogie boys, they were sure putting me down. When they did that old boogie woogie, they sure made a beautiful sound. They make you get on up and let your backbone slip, but your soul keep going too. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie. Oh, my love to do the boogie woogie, it makes me feel so good. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, I really think you should. Let your hands start clapping and your toes start tapping, we'll have a real good time. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie. Listen to the Duck Lodge boogie boys, they were sure putting down. When they did that old boogie woogie, it sure made a beautiful sound. They make you get on up and let your backbone slip, let your soul get to going too. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, do the boogie woogie. Oh, I love to do the boogie woogie, it makes me feel so good. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, I really think you should. Let your hands start clapping and your toes start tapping, we'll have a real good time. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie all day. I love to do the boogie woogie, it makes me feel so good. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, I really think you should. Let your hands start clapping and your toes start tapping, we'll have a real good time. Come on now and do the boogie woogie, yeah, we'll do the boogie woogie all day.
Politics in general and jobs that don't pay enough, 40-hour work weeks, books full of boring stuff, schools that should teach but kids don't learn a thing. These are a few of my least favorite things. Healthcare that won't heal and how people treat the earth, paying tolls and taxes, disbelief in self-worth, bitter cold winters that cut into spring. These are a few of my least favorite things. Religions that claim they're true, don't get me started. Standards that double and people cold-hearted. Judgment and bias when freedom don't ring. These are a few of my least favorite things. all the lying, all the killing. When I'm depressed and sad, I add that to all of my least favorite things, and then I feel really bad. Feel like Julie Andrews or something.